What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. We're covering some of the most major news stories that have been taking place. To list a few, the issue of affordability, which has been the huge talking point between both parties, who can deliver policies that are going to make costs more affordable again in this country. Talking about the crisis in Venezuela between um, themselves and us here in the US and where that tension is being rooted from, as well as the current state of American healthcare and some of the solutions that have been put forth in recent moments. Now, starting with the issue of affordability, and I can't figure out why Republicans are not talking about this because they are winning on the issue and it's not even close. Now, let's break it down by numbers. If you were to list out different states based on their extent of affordability, and depending on each state, which party is in control of that state, the way I'm measuring it is through their state legislature. If a state has a majority in the House and Senate of a certain party, then it's being controlled by that party. If the House and Senate in that state is split, then which party is the governor a part of? So if they have one chamber as well as the governor, then that state is, I would consider being run by that party as well. So again, let's break this down by numbers. According to US News, ranking states based on affordability, the top 10 most affordable states in the US are unanimously run by Republicans. And 19 out of the top 20 most affordable states are run by Republicans. Well, what about the flip side of this? 8 out of the top 10 least affordable states are run by Democrats. And 15 out of the top 20 least affordable states are run by Democrats. Now, if we rank states, what goes into the affordability of a state? Well, looking at the average price of rent, the top 10 states, again, with the lowest average price of rent, are all run by Republicans. This is according to World Population Review. 18 out of the top 20 lowest cost of rent states are all run by Republicans. Again, the flip side to that, 9 out of the top 10 highest price of rent states are all run by Democrats. And 17 out of the top 20 highest price of rent states are also run by Democrats. Looking a little deeper at electricity prices. Well, 9 out of the top 10 lowest electricity price states run by Republicans. 17 out of the top 20 lowest electricity price states run by Republicans. The flip side to that, 8 out of the top 10 highest electricity price states run by Democrats. 15 out of the top 20 highest electricity price states run by Democrats. Let's keep going. Ranking states based on gas prices. 9 out of the top 10 lowest gas price states run by Republicans. 18 out of the top 20 lowest price of gas states run by Republicans. 8 out of the top 10 highest gas price states are run by Democrats. 15 out of the top 20 highest gas price states are also run by Democrats. Let's look at taxes. The Tax Competitive Index coming from the Tax Foundation, 10 out of the top 10 lowest tax states are Republican. 18 out of the top 20 lowest tax states, Republican. 10 out of 10 highest tax states are all Democrat, and 15 out of the top 20 highest tax states are all Democrat. Now you might be wondering, well, these Republican states, no one actually wants to live there. These aren't states people even go to. So of course they have a low cost of living in these states. Well, that's not necessarily the case because now if we look at the states that are receiving the highest amount of interstate migration, when people move from one state to another, well, which states are they choosing? And so looking at states ranked by their net interstate migration, 8 out of the top 10 highest interstate migration states are run by Republicans. 17 out of the top 20 highest interstate migration states are run by Republicans. So people are moving to Republican states. They want to live there. And a lot of it comes down to affordability. Again, let's look at the other side of this. 7 out of the top 10 lowest interstate migration states are Democrat states. And 14 out of the top 20 lowest interstate migration states are run by Democrats. So people are moving out of these Democrat states and they're moving into Republican states. And you can see why, because across the board, Republicans are winning on affordability. And I just can't figure out why nobody's talking about this. It's not even close. Um, But moving on from the issue of affordability, we find ourselves in a very tense conflict with the nation of Venezuela currently. And whenever we talk about a country, we always give a profile of a deeper look into that country. And in this case, it's Venezuela. Venezuela had a GDP per capita in 2010 of $13,646. As of today, their GDP per capita is 4,217. So they're at about even less than one third their GDP from just 15 years ago. So this country is on a straight fall downward. Their Human Development Index is at 0.709, which is the 121st most developed country in the world. That That's not the worst, but it's in the range of below average, I would say. In terms of how free this country is on Freedom House, they rank 13 out of 100. Again, this is again not the worst, but it is certainly not a free country in Venezuela. It puts them in the same category as countries like Nicaragua. Their current president, Nicolas Maduro, who is very much at the forefront of ridicule lately. He's the successor to Hugo Chavez, and Maduro has recently received his third term as of 2024. However, there's a great deal of scrutiny around the circumstances regarding his election. The National Election Council refused to release the voter information regarding like vote tallies. However, the opposition council released about 80% of collected votes, and the votes they released had been verified by an independent source that researched into the situation. And it showed that the opposition candidate actually received 67% of votes, which of course is why the National Election Council didn't want to release the voting information in terms of who voted for who, because Maduro didn't win the election, but here he is claiming his seat in power. And when you look at the what's called the Corruption Perception Index, Venezuela is considered the third most corrupt country in the world. The only countries more corrupt are South Sudan and Somalia. The country of Venezuela scores 10 out of 100, again, making them the third most corrupt country in the world. And for reasons exactly like this, because you have a president who's claiming power when he wasn't even close in the ballot box. But regarding the tension currently with the United States, Venezuela has had their highest ranking officials directly linked to the narcotics trade operating in that country. And it's estimated that narcotics compose about 11% of the country's GDP. which would make the drug trade one of the most major sectors of the economy. And as of recently, the US has taken pretty severe military action to oppose the narcotics trade that's entering the Caribbean and ultimately landing on United States soil. Uh, as of 2019, the US placed sanctions on Venezuelan oil, oil representing the largest good that makes up the Venezuelan economy. Oil is roughly 20% of Venezuelan GDP and represents 50% of government income. Recently, the US seized a Venezuelan oil tanker for operating in violation of sanctions, and they have imposed a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers. And a major reason for doing so is to accelerate inflation in the country and to create a larger amount of emigration out of Venezuela to place pressure on the Maduro regime and ultimately the country of Venezuela to replace their leadership. But regardless, Venezuela operates um, through what's called shadow fleets, where they are able to disguise the location of their sanctioned oil tankers to locations all around the world to make it extremely difficult for others to realize that their sanctioned oil is being transported in and out of the country. And it's even estimated that 37.5% of all oil tankers in Venezuelan waters are under sanctions. If this continues, if Venezuela continues to disregard these sanctions, if they continue to accelerate drug trade into the United States, the possibility of war is certainly not off the table. And I don't think that's something either country really wants to um, have happen, but it's certainly in the deck of cards of things that could happen. Moving on to the current state of American healthcare and why it's been so pressing as of recent. The expiring ACA enhanced subsidies have created a very uncertain future when it comes to American healthcare, and this is something that has been deliberated ad nauseum on the both the House and the Senate floor. What is being discussed specifically, these ACA enhanced subsidies. These subsidies are is money that's being sent directly from the government to health insurance companies. And the ultimate goal is to lower premiums for patients. And the Republican Party has taken a stand against um, this mechanism in pursuing lower premiums. They're opposed to the idea of sending money directly to these insurance companies and would rather see that money being spent directly to the American people who would then be able to go and buy their own health care. Now, as it stands currently, there's about $26 billion being sent to these health insurance companies. And so, given this sum of money, it's certainly worth consideration of how is best to go moving forward. Now, one proposal that many Republicans have been talking about is the government funding HSAs, which are healthcare savings accounts. As it stands currently, there's a lot of mixed opinions when it comes to HSAs. Once a person funds their HSA, they only have until the end of the year before that money is no longer there. And the current plan, at least to my understanding, is that instead of you having to come out of pocket to fund the HSA, it would be the government would be funding your HSA for you. And so this is something the Republicans are promoting. is to send money directly to consumers who could then go out and choose the type of care that they're looking for. Now, some reasons for doing so. There's been a tremendous amount of fraud found within the ACA system, and these um, HSAs would have a verification process to ultimately mitigate the fraud that's currently found within that system. However, when this was put up for a vote in the Senate, the Democrats chose to filibuster this HSA spending. And so, why is it exactly that the Democrats are against the idea of sending money to the American people and would rather support the idea of sending money to health insurance companies? Well, if you look into it, big pharma and health products are disproportionately donating to Democrat politicians and ultimately having more of a say when it comes to these sorts of matters. Again, because they're a major donor to the party, which ultimately uncovers a deeper issue philosophically between corporatism and capitalism. Um, if you're unfamiliar, corporatism is the uh, the philosophy that state functions are run through special interest groups, and in this case, it would be uh, health companies. Whereas capitalism is a system based on individual ownership and free market competition, though you can see this play out very clearly, right at this moment, because we're seeing the Democratic Party protecting this $26 billion payment to health insurance companies who um, are being able to subvert capitalist principles because they're not having to compete with one another to receive that sort of money. It takes the decision-making power out of the hands of individuals and leaves no incentive for these companies to lower their price or to provide a higher quality service because they're not having to win over customers. They're just being sent money directly from the government. Whereas the plan regarding HSAs and sending money directly to the American people, this is the prime example of capitalism because the purchasing power is in the hands of consumers who would then be able to choose the insurer that is able to deliver the lowest price to the insurer who offers the highest quality service or a mix of the two. Um, and again, by giving that money to individuals, you're forcing these companies to compete with one another, which, again, brings down the cost, which improves the quality, and again, is a prime example of capitalism playing out in front of our eyes. And, again, I don't, well, I mean, I do understand why the Democrats have taken this position. It's because they're being bought and paid for by these companies who are looking to protect their bottom line, companies who would rather receive money for free and not have to work for it. And, if you're the company, of course, that's what you want. You just want the government to send you money directly and not have to win over customers because that's easy. But at the end of the day, when the goal is to lower the cost of insurance for consumers, forcing these companies to compete with one another would ultimately bring down the price. And so I think that's the best plan moving forward is the Republicans' idea regarding funding for these HSAs. Again, putting the American people back in the driver's seat when it comes to healthcare. And with all that being said, we find ourselves at the end of another episode here. I certainly hope you enjoyed listening. I hope you were able to pick something up. My name is Brett Cody Fornatoro. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'll see you again very shortly.